Christian, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out.
Of course, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your world of AI and your professional arc, I want to begin with living through COVID, living through that pandemic era. How much of living through that and adjusting has influenced the way that you live life today?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a huge shift. I was in school not that long ago, kind of right before the pandemic, and was working on a as a server at a restaurant there. Was also doing some analyst work at an investment bank, remotely, but that push towards remote after COVID has completely influenced kind of how our current company runs and how my last company as well ran with. We really focus on hiring people internationally and allowing us to scale kind of that way in a very affordable way. And these tools like Zoom and Google Meet that really took off after the pandemic have made all that possible.
So talk to me a little bit about what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day. Let's say they're in the third grade, and one of the kids in the back of the room is really curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Sure. So I would tell them that I work in the AI space and we work on creating products that are going to help solve a user's need. I'd probably go into, what makes a great product and things like that, and less so on the, technical specs of what we work on. So we'll talk about, first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're identifying a problem that, a lot of people can relate to, and unless you want to really niche down, which is harder to sell, but might be more helpful for somebody with a very specific use case.
So let's find out how we got here. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your ultimate dream life?
I have always known that I want to be an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 9 years old. I got a $40 loan from my father at 1% interest, went and bought a bunch of popsicles and walked along the beach and sold them with him, walking 30 feet behind me, obviously make sure I, was safe. But that was what I was doing at 13 years old. I had my first two employees in the video game services business. And, through college, I couldn't stop myself from starting businesses. It's really what I love to do and what I've always wanted to be,
What
was an
about
entrepreneur.
technology? How did technology become kind of this niche for you?
Yeah, so in that kind of first business that I started, not the popsicle one, but the video game services one, it was kind of tech focused from the very beginning. I was going and people would go, "Hey, I play this video game, but in order to get to a super high level, you have to sit there and grind for hours and hours and hours." And they were in the position saying, "Hey, I've got money that I'm making, a lot of money, and not a lot of time because I'm working a job. And so I'd rather you or, the people you're working with grind out leveling up these accounts, and I will pay you for that." I was in high school, so I had a lot of time and not a lot of money, and so kind of felt like a great trade for me. And at a certain point, I started thinking about and realizing, how do I automate this leveling process, right? And so from the very beginning, I went at 13, 14 years old and found people who are willing to go and build or develop in basically a bot or a programmatic thing to play this game and level up those accounts. And so kind of early on learned, how do I manage getting projects done, et cetera, and then was able to kind of undercut competitors in the marketplace by completing these services via a bot rather than sitting there all day and clicking by hand on a computer. And what that meant was, instead of me just have needing to have 10 people or just having two people playing two accounts, I had two people working for me that were managing the bots on five accounts. They weren't perfect, things would break, etc. And so these people, instead of just playing the game all day, would manage a bot um, playing the game for them and making sure that it didn't break.
Wow. That was almost seems like almost pre-AI, kind of that idea of automation, so to speak.
It was pre-AI and it wasn't super complex. It'd be, in the video game, you essentially have to, in order to level up your wood cutting, you would have to chop a tree all day, right? And so all this bot would do was go and click on the different trees to level that up. And I would take, a percentage of all of those deals that I found and then, give some to the people that were managing the bots.
So I got to know, as a tech guy, what's your favorite piece of hardware and your favorite piece of software.
Oh, that's a crazy question. In terms of, honestly, I love Spotify. I wish I came up with Spotify. I think that was such a brilliant idea. He got through did so many things that would have seemingly been impossible. So from a software perspective, it's not overly complicated, but that would be my favorite software. My favorite piece of hardware, I really enjoy. I built my own computer. I love GPUs. I honestly, they've turned into, and even a lot of the computer components have really turned into like really beautiful RGB kind of things. But I love really fancy GPUs.
So, who's been your hero? Who's been kind of an inspiration for you in your entrepreneurial journey?
I've I've had a lot of people that have been super helpful in kind of coming up here. I would say my father was the initial inspiration, absolutely, and kind of made it super clear to me from an early age that it is possible for me to go and start my own business and that it's going to be very difficult, but that the upsides can be potentially massive as well as being able to work for yourself and really kind of be in charge of your own destiny. From there, though, I grew up in California, but came over here to Boise for school. And the university had a program called the Venture College, which was essentially a building at the university where you could go and take your business idea and they're going to introduce you to some people and they are going to, some mentors or potential capital, etc. And there were a lot of local people that kind of took an interest in what I was doing, and not necessarily even because they thought it was a great idea, but because they loved entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurs. And so, locally here in Boise, Idaho, a guy named Rhino Zoller was probably super instrumental in me getting where I am today.
So, if you could meet one tech mind or one entrepreneur that you totally admire, anybody on the planet, spend some time with them that might help you on your journey, who would that be?
Yeah, I've got a kind of controversial one. And I don't necessarily agree with everything this guy thinks or is doing right now, and he's, great at getting himself press coverage. But I honestly believe that what Elon Musk has done with a lot of his companies is quite incredible. And just how he decides to go and solve, I mean, the toughest problems that everyone says, oh, that's not possible or that's not solvable, I think is quite inspiring from an entrepreneurial perspective because a lot of our calculus when deciding to build a product is how easy is this going to be to bring to market? What's our likelihood of success, etc. And, any of those things that he's building right now, if they were to fall on our plate, we would go, no, that's too hard. Likely not to succeed. We're not going to do that, right? And he kind of takes the complete opposite approach of, I'm going to do something impossible. I'm going to get it done. Granted, he does have billions of dollars to do it with, but I'm going to get it done, and he has. So I would love to pick his brain for an hour.
So, obviously, he has a high level of motivation every day for what he does. What about you? What is that every day that gets you up out of bed that helps you operate professionally at the top of your game, but also to evolve as a human being yourself?
Sure. So something that I've realized about myself is I really love what we're doing here, and I really love what I'm doing. I love building companies, and as I've become a little bit more financially successful than maybe I was in the past, and have had kind of the opportunity to go and do cool things or go cool places, it's made me realize even more that this is what I love doing, right? In terms of, oh yeah, I could go and travel here for, a couple of weeks and spend some time and enjoy and all I always find myself, even when I'm in those really cool places, going, man, I want to check back in on work. I want to keep building. I want to land a new sales contract. That's truly what motivates me and gets me up or, wakes me up in the morning is kind of those processes and what that looks like when they're successful. The feeling I get from successfully closing a deal or solving a difficult problem.
So the idea of AI now is like it's the thing. It's not just a buzzword anymore. It's integrated into Chat GPT and all these different levels of our lives. The civilian, regular person out there in the world is experiencing it in a way instead of it just being this catchphrase from a year ago. So with that being said, it's really spreading. It's becoming more global and everybody's using it. Are you afraid of where AI could go? Do you see a dark side that we need to be careful about? Or are you just okay with how it's going and we as humans can handle it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm actually quite terrified of where we're going with AI about the kind of the future. And I use this word a little bit flippantly, but kind of the usefulness of people, I think, goes down in terms of, necessary for economic processes, etc. And at a certain point, if we get too good at utilizing AI, and this is something I'm sure your listeners have heard or have you've heard, but I truly believe that as we continue to automate some of these processes and roles, there's discussion, oh, but you're gonna need people to go and manage the AI, which is absolutely true. But I still believe for every 10 jobs that are lost, you're gonna kind of create one new job, right? One person who can manage an AI that's doing the work of 10. Um, and so I really do worry for a lot of roles that they're going to require a lot of upskilling, as well as even if they have that upskilling, it might not necessarily be enough to keep everybody employed. So that is what kind of worries me is how do we keep people relevant and working um, with these new advances in technology?
So far on your entrepreneurial path that began at 9 with the popsicles all the way up to today in Boise, Idaho, what's the biggest risk that you've taken professionally?
I think kind of some of the decisions I made my last company, Chatterquant, in terms of switching from what we knew we were really good at, which was kind of consumer-facing, retail, trader-focused technology, which was kind of where my last company was, and in deciding to pivot towards B2B business focused was a massive risk considering I hadn't really played in that space before and things were going really well on the consumer side. But even actually, I would change that answer and say creating undetectable was a pretty big risk. Towards the beginning, there was a lot of pushback on what we were building, and the narrative has changed a little bit. But when we would do media interviews, people would go, "Why would you build something like this? It's not positive, etc." Which we disagreed with. We think there's a lot of great use cases for our product, but it was quite controversial to start, and so much so that when we initially launched it, we launched it in Wyoming as an anonymous LLC because of the initial pushback that we were getting, but have since very much come out and are very proud of what we built.
So we're looking at AI now, and it almost seems as though we've hit some level of tech ceiling, but we obviously haven't. It's always going to develop. I mean, in my lifetime, we've done so many wondrous things with technology. Where do you see it in, say, 10, 20 years from now? What do you think is the next frontier that we're going to stumble upon that's going to be magnanimous?
That's part of what's so exciting about the space we're in and AI particularly is that have thought a lot about this and can truly say I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I can make some guesses, right? But every single day, some of the stuff that's being launched is something I hadn't really thought was going to be the next step. If we go back, where did people worry the most about automation? 20 years ago was more so on, oh, autonomous driving and truck drivers are going to be the first thing to be replaced. And then there's going to be robots taking away all the blue collar jobs. And that was very much kind of the accepted mentality from venture capital and Silicon Valley is that robotic automation was going to be the first thing disrupting blue collar work and white collar workers were safe, whereas the reality has very much been the opposite, right? Where these LLMs are coming out and very quickly automating a lot of white collar work and creative work and instead of repetitive physical tasks. And I think we're going to continue to see that trend of white collar work being automated and replaced, kind of high cost, repetitive tasks in obviously on done on a computer. And that is going to continue to be refined for specific niches. And what I mean is, I think the first thing we're going to start seeing is a bunch of different accounting. These are just examples, but a bunch of different accounting roles that are being automated by a bunch of different companies focused in on that because that's say the easiest thing to automate right off the bat, and then you'll start seeing it in legal, and then you'll start seeing it in kind of industry by industry. I think we're going to start seeing that disruption slowly really pull people out of the workforce and be replaced by AI.
I can see that. So, what's the best advice you've ever gotten in your life?
Let me think on that one a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah, no, no, that's good. So maybe this will jog some things. Of everything that you've done at this point in your life, of all the accomplishments and evolution, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I mean, this is very much in the now, but I'm probably most proud of two things. Getting Eagle Scout, that was something that I worked on for a very long time. Started, when I was in first grade, and then ended up getting Eagle Scout like 2 weeks before I turned 18. It
Yeah.
was took a long time. And the second thing would probably be bootstrapping Undetectable AI to where we are today. We made the very conscious decision not to go out and raise venture capital, which could have made a lot of things quite a bit easier for us, but wanted to kind of retain control and ownership, which I think was the right move.
Yeah.
But made it much more difficult in terms of our journey to where we are today.
So at the end of the day, Christian, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Great question. I not all the words I would use are necessarily ones that people might say are positive. Would probably use the word obsessed when I get focused in on something or a problem that I want to solve, or for instance, this company that it takes up my whole life. Right? The work-life balance for me is not super strong at the moment, but it's because I love what I'm doing and what I'm working on, and when I'm taking a shower before I go to bed, etc., I'm always kind of thinking about that. And that's true for just about anything I become interested in. I become a bit obsessive about it. I think compassionate's also a word that would be used, and especially in terms of people that kind of are in my circle, or if I feel responsibility to people we've hired, for instance, to really make sure that number one, they have things to do, and number two, that we can that they have a purpose here in the company and that they like what they're doing and that we can make sure that, they get paid, obviously, right? And they're supporting their family. So I guess loyalty might be a word that you would toss into that.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they want to see the company, they want to ask you questions, learn more, any of the good business, where do they go?
Absolutely. That's another thing I love doing. I love chatting with people who are entrepreneurs or want to become entrepreneurs. And so if somebody wanted to reach out to me specifically, they can go on LinkedIn, Christian Perry from Undetectable AI. I'm always happy to chat with one kind of, want to be entrepreneurs or people who are going through it kind of as we are as a company right now, and love exchanging ideas and being helpful in that way.
Okay. Cool. Christian, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for opening up your world. I appreciate it, man.
Of course, thanks for having me on, Joe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.